What's up, amigos? Commander Jaime here today. Today we're going to go over a Flagburg standard deck profile, so I'm excited to show this one. This is something that I've been messing for a few months now, and I want to show some cool interactions with roaming prison dragons, so let's get right into it.
Also, I've become an official Metafy coach for Card Fight Vanguard, and so if you ever want to get one-on-one time with me to help your skill level, go ahead and book a session with me. I can help with premium format, standard, or even clans like Aquaforce and many others, and even YouTube as well. I just want to help fellow amigos and make an impact within the community itself. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot me a message too. You can use the link down below in the description to book your session as well.
So right now you may be asking yourself, why roaming prison dragons? So with Zorga, if you ever played the deck, you're able to use orders, and when you resolve them, these will trigger in the drop zone. So as long as you have a prison dragon in the drop zone, these are able to revive themselves and activate one of the following abilities if it's just normal order play. And so one of them is give it plus 10k or give it plus crit. 9 times out of 10 you're going to use plus 10, so that way you have a 15k beater. And the one thing that it helps solve an issue for this deck is having an early game. So as you're riding up, you can discard these, and then you can play an order on your grade 2 turn, and you potentially either have 1 column to work with or 2 columns to work with roaming prison dragons. So you can have this early game without really the fear of committing combo pieces and then losing to them. And then even later on, if you need just like a body just to hit over Vanguard, because eventually they get to 13k, this is 15k, so this by itself can hit. And with the inclusion of Shelling Callan Dragon, we can get easily 6 attacks, and so sometimes we may not have multiple restanders and we still do 5 attacks with Shelling. This could be an extra body that we can just like kind of throw down superior call and actually use in that sense. Even in retirement matchups too, so like you're not losing too much advantage when they retire it. And then also they just have this awkward position once you get to closer to your grade 3 turn. Like even if they attack it, it goes to your drop zone and it's a combo piece that you can keep kind of reusing. So for the ride line, you're using any starter that you want, and really the main bread and butter is the grade 1 and grade 2. So we have Rancor Chain and Hush Dragon. So with Rancor Chain, because you're playing a certain amount of orders, you're able to take advantage of the draw 2 and then discard any order. You could also discard a Blitz order if you do play it too, since it just checks for an order at that point. So, but ideally you're gonna actually discard one of your normal orders, because then when you read Hush, it'll actually grab a normal order. So you want to be cautious of that too. So in a sense, you'll get a +2 in hand, which digs a little bit deeper into your deck, which can help with finding combo pieces. And one of the things that I do is hard mulligan for Prison Dragon and an order as well. First, as an order, because you can take advantage of Rancor Chain, but then second, you can find Prison Dragons as soon as possible and start discarding them too. And then our grade 3 is Flagburg, so maybe your opponent may not be seeing it coming, but a lot of the Stoicheia decks sometimes take advantage of Rancor Chain and Hush Dragon, so it really doesn't matter. But with Flagburg, obviously we have our guard restriction, we have our draw, we have our retire. We want to get to the 5th battle, so that helps in that regard too. And then also a quick shout out to James Zuniga from Team Ham for signing this at World, so I appreciate you. And also shout out to Outer Orange. This one didn't do so well, but as you can see, she actually signed it too. So going into the grade 3s in the main deck, we have 3 more copies of Flagburg. You want a Persona Ride. I think because we're a multi-attack deck, we really capitalize on the Persona Ride. So sometimes when you don't Persona Ride, it actually hurts us a lot, especially trying to break numbers, especially if they hit triggers. So it's just very vital to Persona Ride. We have over here Inlet Pulse Dragon. You want to play 4 of these. It's our restander that is free. Essentially, we just had to worry about soul, but it's not too bad in this deck build actually. So it also can go into your soul at the end of the turn if there was 4 more attacks to give you back a card, which is super vital to maintain an advantage. There are games that you're able to build a really massive hand with Inlet, so I definitely recommend playing the 4. So here are some interesting ratios that we're doing. We're playing 3 Roaming Prison Dragon and only 2 Shelling Cannon Dragons. So just like I said with Roaming Prison Dragon, you want to see it enough, so I feel like 3 copies is a sweet spot. I think if you play 4, it may be too cluttered, especially since once you get to the point of grade 3 and beyond, you're more likely to look for your restander so you can get to the 5th battle. So it's not as important to have this or a bunch of them in the drop zone. Ideally, sometimes you just need 1 just to kind of help fill a void if needed. So that's why I feel like 3 is a good number too. So it's not too cloggy, but at the same time, you get at least to see 1, potentially 2 in your early game. And that's when those are the games that sometimes you just explode on. We are playing 2 Shelling Cannon. So there's only so much room left because we're playing Prison Dragons and also some orders. So just having enough Shelling Cannons is appreciative. And I think 2 is just fine for this build. Once you see 1, typically it just stays in the back row anyway, so you can keep reusing the same one. And over time, it can be expensive of using a counterblast per turn. So you're already using a counterblast for Flagburg. You're already using a counterblast for Ascendance Assault or your other restander that you may be using now. So that's 3 counterblasts potentially in a single turn. So it's just be mindful of that. And I feel like once you see one, it's good enough. And then again, we have a revival card, so worst case scenario, you could revive it if you needed to be. It is a solid 23k hitter from the back row that you can just kind of depend on, and especially if they get triggers, it just can actually still hit, which we appreciate. And in this build, we're playing 6 normal orders, so we're playing 4 Spiritual Body Condensation and 2 Ideal Far Away. So Out Orange played different variants of orders, but usually what I see with Flagburg players, we have some type of revival order and some kind of power gaining order as well. So with the revival one, it's a lot more important because you want to make sure you have the right combo pieces that you're using. One of the benefits of Spiritual Body Condensation is that when you discard your grade 2 that restands, it gives an additional 5k, so you're able to be 15k at least, so you could hit over that 13k Vanguard. And then we have Ideal Far Away. One of the things that I really like about this card is that you can put this on a booster and it stacks for every attack that it sees. So even the attack that it boosts, it sees technically the unit in front of it also attacking, so you get the extra 5k to work with. So if you only, let's say, did 5 attacks and it's boosting on the 5th attack, it still counts the 5th attack as a different attack. So you can get a benefit of 25k, for example, which can help push for numbers. So that's why I play this card. It's also a grade 1, and all these are grade 1s now that I think about it. So you can play this on turn 1 or even turn 2 without not losing too much. And what I noticed too with the grade 2 turn plays, especially if you're trying to call a Prison Dragon, you can either call something like a trigger or a booster, use Ideal Far Away, stack it onto that booster, and then the roaming Prison Dragons can superior call themselves, and now you have a solid field. The other alternatives that you use Spiritual Body Condensation early on to pull out the Rancor chain, now it's your booster with the powered up 5k and also its own power up, and now you have a Revival Dragon, the Dragon Revive itself as a solid column too. Now into the rest of the normal units for the deck. So we'll start off with the grade 2s here. We're playing 4 Ascendance Assault, which you could also play the other grade 2 restander that just came out, and one of the Luyuka. So one of the things that I was doing with this build was that I was been playing this in the older format, and what I realized too is that Ascendance Assault is a little more flexible compared to the other one, because the other one is pretty restrictive because it looks for a standing Vanguard and it looks for being the second battle. So it's wave restricted. This is a little more flexible too, so if you need to be, it works out, and it can be roosted much later on too, especially if you put one of the Ideal Far Away orders. This could be restanding later on, so you can see more attacks on its both battles in that sense too. So it's just, the other restander may be better, but it's just something that I've been working with for a while, so I haven't changed it, but that is a quick change that you can do if you decide to play the other restander. So I just want to point that out, but definitely have 4 slots at least for the grade 2 restander, if not more. They're both good in the purposes of Flagburg. And the grade 2 over here, Luyuka. So one of the things that sometimes you don't have access to is an order, and this is another card that you can work with. And also, if you decide to really just hit numbers or maybe a trigger even more so, you can start stacking power on restanders like Ascendance Assault. So it'll be 20k, and then if you revived it with Spiritual Body Condensation, it'll be 25, and then if you Persona right, that'll be 35. Just all these things, and you know, it's just that you can start stacking up. But ideally, sometimes it's just there just to help fix restanding numbers with Luyuka or with Ascendance Assault, but you could always use it with different cards too. So it's just a flex spot that you can use that can easily just give 10k to something. The other thing is that you can play an order and play this card, so you're not restricted to only getting the power from Ideal Far Away or just Spiritual Body Condensation. This gives you a flex spot to be able to have kind of like the benefit of an order and a power up 10k. Onto the rest of the grade 1s, we're playing 4 Sentinel cards, so we're playing 3 of the PG, 1 of the Blitz orders to be able to guard easily certain attacks, and grade 4s and guard restriction. Super helpful. So this deck is a grade 3 deck, so you never be on grade 4, so you can actually use the Blitz order if you want to. This is the World Final ones that I got actually for participating in the World, so this is really cool. And then here we have 3 Prize Trident, and so we still need to have some type of resource management. We need Counterblast to use, and sometimes we can appreciate the excess soul that we can use for Spiritual Body Condensation, for Inlet, and then just making sure that we have a healthy soul after using Rancor Chain early on and moving forward. But mostly it's used for the counter charge too, and it's a booster that you rely on that's 8k, so you can make those like nice numbers with your grade 2s while still getting your resources back for the following turn. Onto the triggers, we are playing a crit. We want to be a little more aggressive. Like I said, if you have a little bit of an early game, so if you get a crit early on, not only you're doing multi-attacks that early, but you're also able to have some crit pressure. So that really puts you ahead of the game. Also, if you're damage denying certain matchups, just having the crit, especially if you're doing like a guard restriction, that can help you seal the gap a little bit to get closer to 6 damage, or you can just actually put the opponent to 6 damage right out front. So it's valuable to still play a maximum number of crit as possible in this format. And also real quickly, if you don't have the soul on a turn with inlet, you can boost inlet with this crit trigger, do the crit trigger skill to first to go into soul and give power to something, and then you can soul blast it for inlet's cost to be able to restand. So that's something, a little neat trick that I wanted to mention. Some people don't know. For the heals, we're playing 3-1 ratios. You want a solid 15k shield that you can still like rely on. And then whatever heal trigger that you feel like that meta game, whether it be at locals or at a big regional tournament that you feel you're going to see matchup wise, this I was playing just expecting more of the restanding, such as like Minerva, for example, and then you also have other decks like Maelstrom that have restanders. You have the Mare, so it really just depends on who's playing what. You could also play the critical one if you're facing a lot of like Gravidia or Seraph or maybe like Brantgate, for example. Actually, Brantgate in general has critical gaining stuff. So the other trigger could be more beneficial in that metagame. So it's just really your call. So it's a flex spot in that sense. And then lastly, 3 draw and 1 over trigger. So this is kind of like 4 draw in a sense. I mean, the over trigger is like every trigger. So you have technically more crit, more heals, you name it. You have a front ability in a sense. But you still need some draw power, so you still want to play the 10k draw, so that way you can actually take advantage of digging deeper into your deck. Also, when you're taking defensives, that helps a lot. And it's 10k shield, so you're not losing too much hand advantage when guarding. So I just want to do a demonstration of like riding up, for example. So let's say you went first, and so you had Soul Blaster ready to draw to and discard an order. And you took a damage, so you have this damage to work with, and then you start writing up to your grade 2. So you go into Hush Dragon, you get your order. Let's say in this example, we'll use Spiritual Body Condensation, and right off the bat, you can actually just use it. And let's say you also discarded at least 1 Prison Dragon for your right lane cost. And so you Soul Blast it immediately, revive it. I'll put it over here. Revive it immediately. Your Prison Dragon sees it, it revive itself. So this is a 15k with 13 plus 2. 15, so 15 plus 15 actually makes a 30k column. So as you can see, you can already attack with just the Vanguard, and then this is a 30k column. So this actually gets passed over 2 trigger thresholds, especially if they're still a grade 1. So the highest they can be after 2 triggers will be 28k unless they got an over trigger. So if you crit them, you can still get through. The other instance that can happen is that if you do so happen to have the second one, you can attack in an L pattern if you want. So 15. This will be Vanguard to Vanguard for 10, and then this will be 30 in this example too. If you use the other order, where is it? Ideal Far Away, you can call any booster. So you can either call maybe a trigger, you can call this kind of booster. Ideally, you want to call one of these grade 1 boosters. But let's say you call this, and depending on how many Prison Dragons you have, let's say you have 2, right? So you put this on here, and this will be 5, 10, and then this will be a 15k power up. So 15 plus 15 is 30, plus 4 makes 34. And if they're 8k base, they still have to drop more than 25k shield. They still have to drop more than 25k shield. So they have to have a 30k shield to stop this. If you only had just the 1 Prison Dragon, so this would only be 5k power up and then 10k power up. So 15 plus 4 is 19 plus 10, 29. So it still hits over 2 trigger thresholds, with assuming your opponent's at grade 1. Otherwise, if you're going second, you just have to accommodate for that 10k Vanguard difference with your numbers too. But this is actually still pretty good, because even if they get 1 trigger, you're still able to hit and apply pressure. And your opponent may just attack this and kind of not give you more damage to work with. But if you're going first, it's not the end of the world, because you can still ride Flagburg and still have access to maybe like your restander. And then if you still have a body to work with, especially if you have a grade 1 that you boosted with, this still makes 13k. So if they just, let's say they didn't even kill the Roman Prison Dragon because they didn't want to give you so much, right? Or it could be an inlet early on just so you can get to 4th battles. This will go into Soul and draw you a card. So you're not necessarily using the Flagburg skill. You'll be using it to like restain Ascendance Assault and get to the 4 attacks and get some advantage that way. Cards like Prize Trident will still stay because it needs to see the 5th battle more. But you can still like stay at low damage, still do 4 attacks, and then you can still use cards like Inlet to actually give you more dig deeper into your deck for your following turn, where they'll give you more damage, and let's say they give you 2 damage, and then you can Persona Ride, and now you have access to the 5 attack turn with this, or you can spice it up with Spiritual Body Condensation and getting other cards and form your formation from there. And so I just kind of wanted to show you that. And also even the Gravidia matchup, I faced Gravidia in locals a couple weeks ago, a good friend of mine, Armando, so shout out to you, Armando. And we were back and forth. We were like only limited a certain amount of damage to each other, so we wouldn't like do our turns effectively. And one of the saving graces was Spiritual Body Condensation, so I would revive something like that, right, for example. And because of that, I would revive a Prison Dragon, so now I have 2 Rearguards to work with for the cost of 1 card. And I wanted to make sure that I had enough attackers hitting, but still only have 2 Rearguards at the end of the turn. When they do the retirement of the Meteors, Bakuburrito sees the number of Rearguards retired this turn, so if they only retire 2, it doesn't get the crit. It has to see 3 or more. So little things like that. So I hope this helps, just kind of showing off with the engine to go with Flagburg. For some players, it may be a little wonky at first because you're playing cards like Prison Dragon and Orders. If you never played Zorga, it may be take some more practice on what to guard with and how to discard properly throughout your right lane discards and even the discards of a PG. So always be mindful of that. So that way you have a fluid experience using this deck too, because sometimes you can have too many grade 3s or too many Orders in your hand and now you have no shield quality. But most of that stuff or those scenarios can be prevented if you're properly discarding them at the right time for, you know, like I said, right line or PGs, etc. So I just wanted to show this quick deck profile for Standard. So this is what I've been messing with Flagburg, and I'm looking forward to messing with Maelstrom even more. And so be on the lookout for a future Maelstrom Standard deck profile that's updated too. I got some ideas from the community as well, and so I'm excited to try those ideas out and actually get a deck profile for you guys soon. All right, till the next time, bye.